Hello my good friends, welcome back to another video after a long time. I've had quite a few things going on, but we are now hopefully going to get back into the swing of things. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about George Orwell, but only insofar as it's a little bit of a springboard for us to talk about the concept of socialism and of libertarian socialism more specifically. And this is kicked off because of a back and forward that I had on a comment thread under an older video of mine called What Peterson Gets Wrong About Orwell. And so this person says, socialism tends to branch off into a billion factions. Orwell, in typical socialist form, was convinced it was his version of it that was the good one, not all those other nasty forms which he criticised in his books. The man was brilliant, but he was not immune to the pitfalls of his own ideology. That wasn't real socialism. And now, as you can see, I gave it a little heart, because I thought, yeah, that's a fair enough critique. I don't quite know, well, looking back now, I took the Orwellian typical socialist form as more of it's very human for us to think that what we believe is the correct version of things and to discount anything else that might seek to co-opt the label that we like to give our own system. And so I responded, much like any human system, there are a lot of different takes on what kind of socialist society is the most preferable. He absolutely viewed Stalin and the larger Soviet project as authoritarian, which tends to bolster claims that he was a libertarian socialist, even though he backed a pragmatic, democratic socialism in his day. And I thought, that was a very fair response to a fair point that was made. The reply was, I see your point, but I disagree. Socialism is not like any human system. A very interesting assertion. Let's see if they can back that up. So we could perhaps compare it to other totalitarian systems, but even there, the death toll sets it apart. So I'm interested because other totalitarian systems to me they are human systems still. Slightly confused. They continue. I also disagree with the part in your video where you call him a radical socialist. If anything, he avoided that path because he understood it so well. Now, this is where we start to get into, this person has a, American public school education idea of what socialism is, in that socialism is communism, is Stalin. And as we go through the rest of this, it definitely becomes a lot clearer that this is what they're thinking about. And then this person puts in a quote. It cannot be said too often that collectivism is not inherently democratic, but on the contrary, gives a tyrannical minority such powers as the Spanish Inquisition never dreamed of. Olé. And as we can see here, it is indeed a quote from George Orwell. And he continues, by bringing the whole of life under the control of the state, socialism necessarily gives people to an inner ring of bureaucrats, who in almost every case will be... Wow, that's rude. Who in almost every case will be men who want power for its own sake and will stick at nothing in order to retain it. Now, to me, and having an understanding of Orwell, this clearly reads as an anti-statist point of view. And so I replied to that, why would an economic system that doesn't prioritise private ownership, of the means of production, not be like any other human system? And on the death toll, how much of that is related to industrialization, and how do we compare the death tolls of socialism and capitalism? And finally, I'm assuming you're using socialism and communism synonymously. I'd argue that they're different systems, much like capitalism and neoliberalism are often used interchangeably, but are indeed different. Now, here, what I was trying to get at is that there are obviously differences in the centralization of political power that occurred under Stalin and the mechanisms of the ownership of the means of production by the workers, or even of the state, which I am not a fan of, the latter, and are different strains of socialist thought. There are some fantastic videos by Vicky1999 where she looks at the real death toll of communism as well as the real death toll of capitalism, and does a deep dive of the kinds of deaths that can be attributed to the mechanisms, the actual running of a communist economy versus a capitalist economy. And I would highly recommend you go and look at those. Now, this person responded by quoting what I said, how do we compare the death tolls of socialism and capitalism? Which, if we're clearly in the West, I'm assuming this person is American just because of their very Cold War Red Scare understanding of the concept of socialism. And they respond, we can compare socialism to other totalitarian systems. Okay. Do you consider capitalism to be a totalitarian system? If so, please explain. So that's pretty interesting. I'm asking how can we compare, probably the two biggest strains of economic thought currently in the world, and they're saying, oh, well, we actually can't compare them. Yours is bad, mine is good. The fact that political terminology, as you yourself have pointed out, is murky at best is part of the problem. Now, this is where, I don't know, whether it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, but, people that have a little bit of an understanding of politics and then they go, oh, both sides are the same, both sides of politics, blah, 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 blah. Everything's, it's just enough to not realize that they don't know enough and they think they know everything and can just discard, the concept of politics or economics completely. And it's a little bit, it's quite reductionist, and I am not a fan. And they continue, I dare say that such confusion is deliberate, so I use the terms interchangeably because those who espouse the labels do so themselves. Or are we to believe that the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics was socialist? I guess I would just reply and say, do we think that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is democratic just because they say they are? We can analyze and categorize things based on certain criteria. And it's fine if we do that and then we come to the assumption that, oh, they were socialist. But here is where this person and many others, which is why I'm making this video, unfortunately can't identify that there are different political and economic strains of all of these different systems. They continue, were they communist? Marxist? It's like entering a web of deliberate misdirection. It's a dishonest game, but playing the chameleon is perhaps one of the reasons for its present survival. Now, were they communist? Were they Marxist? The USSR was certainly Marxist-Leninists. Particularly under Stalin, they incorporated some of the critiques of capitalism from Marx with the political writings of a revolutionary at the start of the 20th century under Lenin. But these are not synonymous with each other. And the fact that this person doesn't even point out Marxist-Leninism is pretty telling. Because Marxism as a fundamental concept is as an analysis. A critique, certainly, based on an analysis of capitalism, of a huge economic system. And Marx and Engels, I should say, a lot of contradictions within capitalism, within a human system that we can see right now playing out. And so there's a lot of value in looking at Marx or other analysis that has grown out of Marx's work. Because, we are also 150 years past that. And capitalism has also changed. And so this person says, one can never have a clear conversation when the other part is using terminology like a Swiss Army knife. But I stand by the Orwell quote that I posted, as I do with the following. And then they had a colon, and then they didn't post anything else. I said, Orwell was absolutely against centrally planned economies and for the freedom of the individual, which is the libertarian part of libertarian socialist. The socialist part is being against private ownership of the means of production. As for your queries about the USSR, do we also think that the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is democratic? Oh, there you go. I was even on fire when I was responding to it. I feel as though you are unable to objectively analyse different political and economic systems because you're too emotionally attached to certain terminology. And it's like I always say, facts don't care about your feelings. This person then replied, by bringing the whole of life under the control of the state, socialism necessarily gives power to an inner ring of bureaucrats who in almost every case will be men who want power for its own sake and will stick at nothing in order to retain it. So, the remainder of that quote that I read earlier. They say, I don't commend Orwell for being a socialist. I commend that while being a socialist, he was not blind to the unspeakable evil which it could unleash. Very objective and measured language. That, to me, makes him a moderate, which is why I asked you to clarify why you would refer to him as a radical socialist. He was radical if you read not just that one quote from Orwell, or have an understanding of Orwell, that communism and socialism are one thing, and that one thing is Stalin, and socialism is, 100 million deaths. And because Orwell criticized what he saw as a reactionary state under Stalin, therefore he's not actually a communist, because it's one spectrum from democracy and capitalism on one end to communism on the other. And because Orwell wasn't right at the communist end, he couldn't have been a radical. And I responded by saying, yes, I accept that he was not a fan of the state. He was firmly opposed to the Soviet Union long before the majority of Western leftists turned on them following the Hungarian Revolution in -- And this was true. If you read Homage to Catalonia in the 30s, he was already anti-Soviet, already anti-Stalin, because while fighting in the Spanish Civil War, he was able to see the impact and the agenda that the Soviet bloc had. And he wrote as such in the 30s. And I say, do you understand that socialism isn't synonymous with a centrally planned economy? To which this person did not respond. And what I'd like to have a little bit of a quick look at is libertarian socialism, just to give us a bit of an overview of how something that, faced with a lot of propaganda, as we're seeing again, in the 2020s, about socialism, they don't understand the actual concepts of socialism. Or I would even say the concepts of communism, or even capitalism, really, as an economic system and the way that it functions. And this is, of course, best exemplified by the Peterson-Zizek debate, where Peterson had no idea what Marxism, the field, the study, the academic institution that Marxism is, had no idea what that was, because all he did was go and read the Communist Manifesto, which was an early political polemic. But then after that, he went and developed his greatest works. It would be like looking to one of Peterson's university graduate papers, discarding everything else that he's written and saying, yes, this is exactly everything that Peterson believes. And we can look, when we think about what Jordan Peterson is, we can look at this one thing, a pamphlet. The Communist Manifesto was a pamphlet, and we can say, that's it. Anyway, here we go. So, yes, it's Wikipedia, but it gives a good overview of the different conceptual elements of libertarian socialism. So, it says libertarian socialism, also known by various other names, is a left-wing, anti-authoritarian, anti-statist, and libertarian political philosophy within the socialist movement, which rejects the state's control of the economy under state socialism. Overlapping with anarchism and libertarianism, libertarian socialists criticize wage slavery relationships within the workplace, emphasizing workers' self-management and decentralized structures of political organization. As a broad socialist tradition and movement, libertarian socialism includes anarchist, Marxist, and anarchist or Marxist-inspired thought, and other left libertarian tendencies. Hopefully everyone is able to see what I was getting at in my responses to this person. They were treating socialism as a concept as a totalitarian, autocratic, dictatorial, centrally planned, Stalin gets to kill everyone that he wants. Whereas it's anti-authoritarian, anti-statist, and it's critical of capitalism. It's anti-capitalist as well. Anti the private ownership of the means of production. It goes on. Libertarian socialism rejects the concept of a state. It asserts that a society based on freedom and justice can only be achieved with the abolition of authoritarian institutions that control specific means of production and subordinate the majority to an owning class or political and economic elite. Libertarian socialists advocate for decentralized structures based on direct democracy and federal or confederal associations such as citizens or popular assemblies, cooperatives, libertarian municipalism, trade unions, and workers' councils. This is done within a general call for liberty and free association through the identification, criticism, and practical dismantling of illegitimate authority in all aspects of human life. Libertarian socialism is distinguished from the authoritarian approach of Bolshevism and the reformism of Fabianism. Past and present currents and movements commonly described as libertarian socialist include anarchism, as well as communalism, some forms of democratic socialism, guild socialism, Marxism, and specifically autonomism, council communism, and left communism, among others, participism, and revolutionary syndicalism. So it's also the far lesser known aspect of socialist theory, and that also is because it doesn't have the boot of the state to crush people. Stalin could not have been a libertarian socialist and wielded the might of the Soviet Union. And we're just going to have a quick little skip through some of the important elements that I think are worthy to highlight. So, anti-capitalism. According to John O'Neill, it is forgotten that the early defenders of commercial society like Adam Smith were as much concerned with criticising the associational blocks to mobile labour represented by guilds as they were to the activities of the state. The history of socialist thought includes a long associational and anti-statist tradition prior to the political victory of the Bolshevism in the East and the varieties of Fabianism in the West. Libertarian socialism upholds individual self-ownership, as well as the collective ownership of the means of production. If we have a look at its association with anarchism, libertarian socialism has its roots in both classical liberalism and socialism, though it is often in conflict with liberalism, especially neoliberalism and right libertarianism, and authoritarian state socialism simultaneously. While libertarian socialism has roots in socialism and liberalism, different forms have different levels of influence from the two traditions. For instance, mutualist anarchism is more influenced by liberalism, while communism and syndicalist anarchism are more influenced by socialism. However, mutualist anarchism originates in the 18th and 19th century European socialism, while communist and syndicalist anarchism have their earliest origins in early 18th century liberalism. Anarchism posed an early challenge to the vanguardism and statism it detected in important sectors of the socialist movement. As such, the consequences of the growth of parliamentary action, ministerialism, and party life charged the anarchists would be de-radicalism and embourgeoisement. Wow, I'm a terrible leftist. Further, state politics would subvert both true individuality and true community. In response, many anarchists refused Marxist-type organisations, seeking to dissolve or undermine power and hierarchy by loose political cultural groupings, or by championing organisation by a single, simultaneously economic and political administrative unit. The power of the intellectual and of science were also rejected by many anarchists. In conquering the state and exalting the role of parties, they, the intellectuals, reinforced the hierarchical principle embodied in political and administrative institutions. Revolutions can only come through force of circumstances and or the inherently rebellious instincts of the masses, the instinct for freedom. Or in Bakunin's words, all that individuals can do is to clarify, propagate, and work out ideas corresponding to the popular instinct. So that's it. It was a little bit of a rant, and it did come off me having a bit of an argument with somebody in my comments section, although as I try to embody, it's teach or tolerate. I try not to do ad hominem attacks when people ask questions. I try to take them in good faith, and I hope from my back and forth in that comment section you could see that I was trying to do that. This is a bit more of an elaboration for people that might be wondering, or thinking that libertarian socialism is an oxymoron, which now we can hopefully see that it isn't. And for that person that was in my comment section, if you've watched this and if you've made it this far, thank you so much. If you haven't changed your mind, that's fine, but I hope that I've given you a little bit of a broader context. I want to give a massive shout out to my patrons who have stuck around through my months of inactivity, and those are Nick, Unintendo, Extremely Online Left, Ben Snow, Jordan Mark, and Dangwin. Thank you very much.
They're based on feelings, not facts.
I'm not your gender studies professor who has to cater to your trigger warning, microaggression, safe space bullshit.
Most women are happier at home.
Clean up your room. Organize your local landscape. Schedule your time.
And I have to say that my brain is still in recovery mode from taking in so many high-level important ideas.